Welcome to our latest episode of the 3-Minute Therapy Podcast with me, Dr. Michael Edelstein, a clinical psychologist and practitioner of REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, and Kevin Benbow, a counselor and therapist and practitioner of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, REBT. So why don't we start with the basics? What is REBT? And Kevin, would you like to start with that?
Sure. Rational emotive behavior therapy is one of the cognitive behavior therapies. Interestingly, REBT was the original cognitive behavior therapy, and then I guess for branding, CBT kind of took the mainstream. And but basically, the big idea in rational emotive behavior therapy is that our beliefs, namely our irrational beliefs, tend to cause us unhealthy, negative emotions. For example, if I'm in a traffic jam and believe the traffic jam should not exist or I should not be inconvenienced, I'm more than likely going to make myself angry by it. So events don't in and of themselves have the power to disturb us emotionally. We actually do it to ourselves. And that's what I find to be important and even liberating about REBT is it puts puts the keys to our mental health in our own hands. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, very good. I just have one addition, and that is, you said, Kevin, REBT is one of the cognitive behavior therapies. I would put it the other way. I would say the cognitive behavior therapies all come from REBT. So I'd put REBT as a super heading, and then all these other cognitive behavior therapies below it. So they're all offshoots of REBT. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. REBT is the original cognitive behavior therapy, no question about that.
Okay. So today we're discussing 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a very popular book by Stephen Covey that everyone seems to love, got high reviews and recommendations, but we have some problems with it. I was suggesting a title for this podcast, Stephen Covey, The Good, the Bad, and Ugly, but that was vetoed. So I think there are some good things in it and some bad things in it and some very bad things in it. So his first habit he calls be proactive. And that's about taking responsibility for one's reactions. And actually that was what Kevin was just talking about. You are responsible for your reactions. Now, if you take responsibility, if you don't take responsibility for that, I guess Stephen Covey is saying you're not proactive. Although I think of proactive is being very, very active in your life rather than passive or just mediocre in terms of how active you are in making changes in your life and moving ahead on your goals. Is that your impression, Kevin, or what do you think of be proactive?
Well, I think I agree it's important to be proactive in life. If I wait, for example, for things to come to me, they're probably not going to come to me. So I've been in business, and not just mental health, but other business endeavors for most of my adult life. And I found that the more I take the lead in making things happen, the more things happen. If I sit back and wait for things to happen, they're probably not going to happen.
Yes. So I think we can generally agree with that, to be proactive, be an active participant in your life. The second one is begin with the end in mind. Now, I would put it a little differently. I don't have an argument with the idea, but I do have some arguments with how he phrases things. And I think it would be clearer to say, start with an objective and then work toward achieving that objective. I think begin with the end of mind is a little more abstract. But that's basically what he means. Have an objective and figure out the best means toward that objective and work toward that. Kevin, did you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, one thing about beginning with the end in mind, if you've ever worked a maze in the newspaper that's poorly constructed, quite often it's easy to start it from the end of it and to go backward. I find this can be true with some problems that my clients have, especially clients who maybe don't have a firm idea of what they'd like to get out of therapy. Sometimes some solution-focused questions can be helpful here. I'll ask something like, let's imagine today's your last day of therapy and you've gotten everything out of it that you've come to get. What would be different in your life? Sometimes, not always, but sometimes people are able to verbalize exactly what it is they'd like to see, and that can kind of help us set objectives. And so so technically, other than what you're talking about with the semantics of it, I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah, I would agree. Habit number 3 is put first things first. I would put it a little differently again. Do what's most important and urgent first, and then rank order everything else you want to do in terms of what's most important. One of the techniques I recommend to clients is list the things you'd like to do, and then put the letter A next to the most important, the letter C next to the least important, and then the letter B, what's ever left, somewhere in between, and start with the A's. So I think that's along the lines of put first things first, but I think that's a clear way of doing it.
There is, I see where there could be a variant on this, and this might be minor. Might just be a minor me picking at little things here. But sometimes there are things that are not important, but man, they can become a pain in the ass if they don't get done, if we keep putting them off. For example, to fight against procrastination, one important rule is to work on when something comes up in your schedule that's irregular. For me, for example, that could be emptying my shredder and emptying my trash. It's real easy to put that off because it might not be important in the moment. But if it continues to pile up, I might find myself buried in the scraps of my shredder or in my overflowing garbage can. So sometimes it's important to take those irregular things and just get them out of the way so things can go forward. Helps to fight against procrastination.
Yes. Do the minor things and get them out of the way. I like that way of phrasing it, Kevin. What comes to mind for me is getting gas for my car. And it's easy to say, well, I still have some gas, so there's no reason to get gas. But eventually, you might find yourself out of gas on the highway. So those are some things that seem not that important for the moment, but not a good idea to procrastinate on because they tend to build up.
It'll become important pretty soon if we don't get the gas. I do something similar with your lists. I'll make a list of tasks, and sometimes there might be 5, 6, 7 things on the list, and I'll number them. I'll number them 1 through 7, 1 through whatever, and just start going by the numbers. And then whatever I don't get to just goes to the list for the following day.
Right, yes. Next is think win-win. Now, when he's talking about win-win here, I think he's talking about in relationship to other people. So he seems to make a switch from improving your life on your own, the first 3 habits, and then relationships with others. And I think the next few relate to relationships with others. So I think win-win means that if you want to get something done, and you're trying to work it out with another person, and they have a different idea of what to get done, often the best way to come to a mutually agreeable solution is to think win-win. What works for me plus what works for you. So I think that's a very good idea if that's what he means.
Sometimes compromise can be indicated. Sometimes both sides giving a little bit. I don't know if this win-win is always possible, though, especially if we're talking about our children. Some children are just a handful, and sometimes they're simply they're simply going to lose. Or sometimes in life we're going to lose. So this is certainly nothing we can guarantee. This strikes me as aspirational in nature. This is something to be striven for, but I don't think there's a solid way. There's no formula we can guarantee that this is absolutely going to happen all the time.
Yeah, and I agree with your exception with children. But aside from children, would you agree, Kevin, with adults that win-win is generally what's going to work, and win-lose is not a very good idea?
Yeah, I don't think win-lose is a good goal if we're talking about establishing relationships and cooperation. But win-win, I think, is something to strive for. I just don't know if it's always possible.
Yeah, yeah, right. But can you think of a relationship between adults where it's not possible?
Well, if I'm thinking about a car accident that I was in back in 1992, I don't see how that could have come out as a win-win. I'm the one that won because because the person rear-ended me, and I was able to successfully sue her. I don't see that as a win-win situation. Uh, that's the one that comes to my mind right
When
off
you,
the bat.
when you spoke to her after the accident, um, did she agree she rear-ended you?
Nope, she blamed me for rear-ending me. She actually received a ticket for careless driving right there at the scene, but she did not agree that she did anything wrong. When she admitted to the police officer that she was looking over her shoulder and didn't see me, she put me in a neck brace for about 6 weeks, and yeah, that there was no middle ground there. And when I say sue her, let me back up a little bit. Florida was a no fault state, so I actually ended up going after my own insurance company in that one because they refused to pay. So
Oh, I
it's kind
see.
of a convoluted story, but yeah,
Right,
she didn't
right.
win.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think applied to more intimate relationships than a stranger who rear-ends you, where win-win is more workable.
Right, right. I agree.
Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think that's very good. And in discussions with another person who you have a relationship with that you disagree on, it's important to understand what they mean. So what do you mean is a good question by the various terms you're using. And another good question is, how do you know? So if someone says to me, um, I suggest you get the vaccine, then there are various vaccines and things like that. So I could ask them, what do they mean by the vaccine? And then how do you know that would be effective? In other words, what's the evidence? So I think that's part of understanding and being understood. I find that in a lot of disagreements, especially political disagreements between people, they don't agree because they're using the same words to mean different things. A common example is capitalism. Some people mean one thing by capitalism, state capitalism, for example. Other people mean other things by capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism. So unless you know specifically what you're talking about and you define what you mean ask the other person to define what they mean, then often you'll be missing each other intellectually in the discussion.
I think this is really important to understand first, or at least be willing to seek clarification. It's important that we just not go off with our suggestions before we fully understand. Quite often, I know when I work with people in my personal relationships, I like to ask a question like, do I got that right? Or does that sound right to you? To make sure that I am being understood. And interestingly, when I do that, people will gently correct me if I don't understand. And so helps to clarify things.
Yeah, another good question along those lines, and I like those questions, Kevin, is do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying? And usually people will say yes, but then the key is to ask them, well, what's your interpretation of what I'm saying? And often you'll get some response that really isn't what you're saying, but they thought they understood what you're saying. So just as saying yes doesn't mean as much as if you ask them to repeat back what they think you said, and then you could get more in line with them that way.
You're bringing something to mind there. I was doing the 3-minute exercise with a client not too long ago, and we created her effective new belief. She read it to herself, and I asked her what her thoughts were, and I was surprised because she says, it sounds like I'm making excuses for my behavior. And so we clearly had a little bit more work to do there.
Next is, again, in business, I guess, he says synergize. And that's another example where he uses terms that I think are somewhat obtuse, and he could be clearer in naming these habits. So by synergize, he means in business, if you're on a team, then combine the strengths of people in a team. So you could call it division of labor. So the entire team works in a maximally effective way.
And that is one that I am not very good at. I have never been a good team player for my entire life. I'll just own that one. I was the kid that in school that got marked does not play well with others. And so I haven't put my finger on that, if it's my temperament or my tendency to be disagreeable. Those who know me personally and seen that up close will say that. So I'm going to have to defer. I have never been successful creating positive teamwork. I will say everything I do is individual. My guitar, I'm a solo musician. I like games like chess. I'm just learning how to play now. Like things where the objective is to vanquish my opponent. So I don't have anything else to say other than that, Mike.
Actually, chess is not individual. Chess, if you're going to have a game, you could do chess puzzles and things like that. But chess does require your cooperation and the cooperation of another person. So, so it starts with, do you want to play chess? And chess doesn't happen if the other person doesn't want to play chess. And if they say yes, then there's already mutual cooperation. And where do you want to play? When do you want to play? Do you want the white or the black pieces? Things like that. So I think there's a lot of competition in chess between the two players, but a lot of cooperation also.
Well, right. But that's kind of like if I want to get into a fight after school, we agree where we're going to meet and who's and what the terms are going to be. But ultimately, the goal is to win, right? I hear what you're saying, though. We do.
So that's the competition part. But where you're going to meet, when you're going to have the fight, that's the cooperation. And without the cooperation, you wouldn't be able to compete, have the competition, and without the competition, you could cooperate, but then the game isn't played. Next is, what is next? So we up to 7. Yeah, sharpen the saw. And that's another great example where he uses these terms maybe literary terms, but is this a literary piece or is this a self-help piece? So sharpen the saw. I had no idea what he meant by that, but apparently he means he's talking about renewal, renew your resources, sleep well, eat well, exercise well, those kinds of things, keep your health up. That's sharpening the saw. I guess the saw is your body and your mind, and keep that in top shape. Do you think I have that right, Kevin?
I think so. And then there's also the skills of what we do. I personally find it important to I always exceed my CEUs, my continuing education units, every licensure cycle, just because I like to learn different things about the process of counseling, therapy, that sort of thing. So I'm continually trying to improve at what I do. And in psychotherapy, that can be no easy task sometimes, depending on the kinds of problems that we're facing.
Right. And the continuing education classes you take, most of mine do not seem terribly useful, except in terms of getting CE credits. It's useful in that way.
This is I've gotten pretty selective over the years about where I get them from. But yeah, I agree. A lot of them are just read this and fill in the test, and that's that. I've done those, and I still do those if I'm interested in the material. But,
Right.
mhm.
And so those are the 7 habits. I had some overall problems with it. Any that you wanted to mention?
No, not really. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, one of the problems is it's a little too straightforward because he doesn't start or think about the problem separation technique. And the problem separation technique, which I discuss in my book, 3-Minute Therapy, and on my website, 3minutetherapy.com, the problem separation technique says when you face a problem, start by separating the practical problem from the emotional problem. For example, if I have studying math to do, the practical problem might be that I could use some math tutoring because I'm not very good at math. And the emotional problem could be I get very anxious when I study math. So unless you address both separately, you're not going to be as effective in doing well on your math test. So look for the emotional problem. Do you have anxiety, depression, anger, guilt, any of those, and address those first, and then look at the practical problem, like the skills training, or as he says, be healthy in the various ways to be healthy, those kinds of things. So I think that's important, and he doesn't differentiate between the two. The other is he doesn't mention a very, very important thing with his principles, and that is the importance of practice. In order to get good at these things that he recommends, it means practicing over and over again, trying not to be perfectionistic or look for guarantees or certainty in the solutions, but practice. And the more you practice his principles, the better you'll get at it. So if I could speak with him, and I don't think he's still alive, but if I could speak with him, I'd strongly suggest that he add the problem separation technique, separate the emotional from the practical, and use REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy, on the emotional problems. And then once you disabuse yourself of those, you can think more clearly about implementing the practical solutions. And then again, the importance of practice. And I always emphasize that to my clients, writing out 3-minute exercises. And you could look at our YouTubes on 3-minute exercises, the ABCDEF, in order to practice a new way of thinking and uprooting your musts and shoulds and acting on your preferences. So that was my last word. Do you have a last word, Kevin?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. He doesn't seem to address the emotional aspect of it at all, but that seems to me because he's focused on the practical here. But it is true that we're not able to make any headway, or not very, usually not very much headway if we have a lot of unhealthy negative emotion and while we're working on our problems. In fact, we're probably going to make things worse.
Yes, yes. And my last word is thanking you, Kevin. That's Kevin Benbow, REBT therapist, who joins me every week in these 3-minute therapy podcasts. And thanking Chris Rossini, the man in the wings, our technical person who, without his cooperation, these podcasts wouldn't happen. So thank you so much, Chris Rossini, for that. And practice uprooting your musts and shoulds and working on implementing your preferences to stay on the rational side of life.